Hello and welcome to Newsnight on Channels Television. I'm Nell Taigwe, and it is always a pleasure to bring you a fresh conversation every time we come to you. Thank you for letting us be a part of you. Before we start today's conversation, let's hear your feedback.
You cannot quench the anger in the land by communicating you are buying another presidential jet. It is a stimulus to anger and violence. Of all the comments I have heard from different sources, no one seems to talk about the issue of overpopulation. It is not an issue yet. That's what Tinubu is trying to fix when he said he wants the economy to grow faster than the population. For example, China has a population of 1.4 billion, but a GDP of 20 trillion. Actually, our economy is growing faster now. The only problem is the food crisis, at least the main one.
One of the fundamental needs of man, besides clothing and food, is shelter. But is it affordable or available? Now, the other side of the question will be, what is it that each person or each Nigerian desires? Affordable housing or a palace to live in? Indeed, some will say, even if I was living in a matchbox, as far as it's my own, it is a palace. But is it possible that every Nigerian is able to afford or is able to own a home? Some say it is possible, and because there are institutions that have been put in place to see that happen. True or false? Well, these are questions that many Nigerians ask. But we sat down for a conversation with one who is in the system and should know if it is possible. Also, the number of the deficit that Nigeria has in terms of housing, is it possible that numbers will be brought down? Yeah, there's that conversation and different numbers have been put out. But on the average, it's about 20 million housing unit deficit. Can that be taken care of? Newsnight sat for a conversation with the managing director and the chief executive of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. He talks to us about what's being done, what has been done, what can be done, and what should be done just to be able to reduce the deficit in the housing sector. Also, he talks to us about the challenges of putting this product out there and how is it that many Nigerians don't even know about what they do. Mr. Shehu Osidi, Managing Director, Chief Executive of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, thank you for speaking with us on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.
You have been on this seat for less than a year, so to speak, but the issues around housing in Nigeria, I dare say they are older than you. And so I wonder how you're able to carry that weight of the housing situation in Nigeria.
Yeah, I would say it's a very interesting challenge. It's an opportunity because once you find yourself playing a role in a space that is very critical to the development of the country, I think it's a challenge that is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. So I would say so far it's not been easy, but it's been very interesting.
Mm-hmm. When you say it's not been easy but very interesting, some would ask, what is making it not easy? There's enough land. There are enough people. But maybe a few people tend to get the houses more or get the facilities. We'll come down to talk about the facilities because that's what you're supposed to do. So it looks like there are a few people who tend to get these facilities faster or more easily than others. So is that where the challenge is?
That's an interesting question because housing, like you said, is one of the most important needs of man. We have a very huge population, and yet we have a very huge housing deficit. And what I would like to say is that we have houses we do not need, and we need houses we do not have. And therefore, what do I mean? We have a number of vacant houses all over the place in different locations across the length and breadth of this country. And the question is, what kind of houses are these houses? And so what kind of houses do Nigerians need? So what we need in Nigeria is what we call affordable housing. And like you know, housing or affordability is a function of two variables. One is income, the other is cost. Now, we have the income levels in Nigeria are generally low. And so people are not able to afford houses. So we have a situation where you either do not have houses, or the houses you have are not within the threshold of affordability to our target market. What we mean by our target market within the context of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria are the low and medium income earners in the country. So now providing affordable housing or housing finance for a target market that has low income in an economy where prices are escalating because of inflation and other variables would clearly tell you that the challenge is quite huge.
How long do you think if the FMBN takes grip, gets recapitalized, and is set with the manager and is going at the pace you say you're going, putting in infrastructure and all of that, how long would it take to put a dent on this housing deficit in Nigeria?
Well, that's a tough call. Like you know, a lot of figures have been thrown around with respect to what is the housing deficit in Nigeria. What we do know is that it's over 20 million units. And that's trillions of naira that is required. So I would say that it is not something that the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria can do alone. We need other players, to come into the market. The country needs to open up to foreign investors. We need to encourage Nigerian investors, to tap into the market and explore the affordable, housing market, like I explained earlier. So government needs to create an enabling environment so that foreign investors can come in, Nigerian investors can come in. We need to construct houses massively. And that's why I'm happy with Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he did the groundbreaking ceremony for the 3,112 housing units at Karsana in February. Mr. President said he wants to turn Nigeria into a major construction site, so that construction should be going on, because housing provides employment. One of the major issues that we have in Nigeria now, even issues that have to do with security, is because of lack of employment. So if we can open up the housing market massively through participation by all parties, we need the private sector heavily. And like I said, it's a function of demand and supply. If we can upscale supply, naturally prices will come down. The prices are high up because we have huge demand in the face of less supply. So I think it's a national problem, and we need to address it from the national point of view, where major players would need to come in. And I think that it's a thriving market where there's a huge opportunity. Right now we have over $300 billion tied down in land assets. State governors need to free this up by constantly issuing certificates of occupancy, COFOs, by signing consents, because there are a lot of issues that are holding down land transactions in Nigeria. So we need all stakeholders to come on board. State governors releasing land, because land is held in trust for the people by state governors. A lot of land is in the hands of the state governors. And until they're able to release this by issuing COFOs, providing titles, signing consents, to allow deeds or mortgages, So if they are able to do this, we will free up the huge capital that is tied down in lands, and then we can have massive production of houses.
But housing is a fundamental need, and some will say it's also a fundamental right. So, but you say we need affordable housing, yet there are many an empty house across the country.
Yeah.
So how is it that we are getting more and more of those unaffordable, inaffordable houses, and yet people are still needing houses?
Yeah.
Isn't that where the Federal Mortgage Bank is supposed to come in?
That's why I said we have houses we don't need, and we need houses we don't have.
Okay.
Now, like I said, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria was created to provide mortgage finance to the low and medium income earners.
Indeed.
So the kind of houses that the low and medium income earners can afford are what we call the affordable housing.
Granted. So let me stop you there.
Yes.
Now, we have houses we don't need, and we need houses we can't afford.
We don't have.
We don't have.
Yes.
Your job, as you said, is to provide facilities to help Nigerians get houses. But would you say that the bank has been able to do that since its existence?
Now, I will explain that within a context. Ordinarily, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is a mortgage institution, and our job is to provide mortgages so that individuals can buy houses. That presupposes that the houses are available, and then you provide mortgage finance so that people can then buy those houses. But because houses are available, like I said, are not within the threshold of affordability to our target market, it becomes then a challenge. And that is why we decided to venture into construction financing, for the reason that we want to control the cost at which these houses are delivered so that they should fall within that threshold. And when the houses are completed, we then provide mortgage finance so that individuals who are contributors to the National Housing Fund can now offtake those houses by way of mortgage. And this we do by, through a number of products that we have rolled out.
So your job, you were created to provide mortgages for Nigeria.
Exactly.
But now you're venturing into construction financing. Some will say you're going out of your space, but
Yeah,
you weigh in on that. So in construction financing, as a bank, you're expected to make profit, right?
Yes.
Yes, the facilities you give are single digit, but now you're doing construction financing, and then you still give facilities to people to go and buy those buildings when they are ready.
Yeah.
So where are you not operating at a loss in this space then?
Okay. Now, we are still offering construction finance at single digit.
Okay.
Because, like I said, the ultimate objective of establishing the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is to provide mortgage financing at single digit, which doesn't happen in any institution in this country. Only the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for now is able to provide mortgages at single digit. So we also finance developers to provide these houses with single digit facilities so that we can also achieve the offtake through single digit. So, but please, it's important to clarify the fact that we're also venturing into construction finance to provide houses within the threshold of affordability does not mean that we do not also finance mortgages ordinarily for houses that are constructed by other developers. So, we have different segments of contributors to the National Housing Fund. Presently, the maximum amount of loan that we can offer is 50 million. 50 million. So if we have houses that are 50 million or 30 million or 40 million that are constructed by other developers, we also provide mortgage financing for contributors to the National Housing Fund that can afford those houses. Now, for the lower income that are not able to afford those kind of houses, we finance construction so that we can ensure that those houses are delivered at lower prices so that low income earners can also afford mortgages to buy those houses. Okay. So we're actually trying to cover various segments of the market within the context of contributors to the National Housing Fund.
Is this accessible only to the civil servants or to every Nigerian?
It is actually accessible to every Nigerian, but you have to be a contributor to the National Housing Fund. So if you're a civil servant, normally your employer, if you're a Nigerian worker, whether in the private or public sector, your employer will deduct 2.5% and remit to the National Housing Fund.
Is it a statutory deduction?
It's a statutory deduction.
So,
because it's an act of...
Would it be right to say then that there are many employers of labor who are not even doing that?
Oh, sure. We have some.
And how are you going about it? Has the bank considered going after people to remind them, I didn't say persecute them, to remind them that, look, you're failing in this and we could take you to court.
Oh, sure. We have been largely pursuing this by way of advocacy, by moral suasion. We have not really used the court option because we believe in engagement, that we can actually engage. If these employers and employees see the value of contributing to the scheme, one is to obey the law because there's a law, it is a mandatory contribution. And then secondly, there is value in it because it is the only scheme that affords an individual, in the example that I have given, where you can contribute as less as 15,000 naira or 20,000 naira, then you can access a mortgage of 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. That is an opportunity that people have. Because you contribute to that fund, you can have access to a mortgage. However, there are some organizations which we describe as recalcitrant organizations who refuse to make the deductions. In some cases, they make the deductions and they don't remit. All of these are offenses and for which penalties are specified in the law, the NHF Act. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy, engaging organizations, encouraging them to make sure that they live up to their legal obligations and so on and so forth. And we have also been sensitizing employees so that because it is their right. If they know that this is an opportunity that they have, then they can also put pressure on their employers to make sure that they make the deductions and pay so that they can have an opportunity to take loans to own their own homes.
This of late, we've had some protests across the country. That if this housing matter is taken off the board, besides the matter of providing transportation and all of that they've been climbing, and hardship protests, that's what they call it. If this is enforced or pushed forward, a lot of the people protesting now will not protest because they know that they have a house, they have a roof over their heads, and their children can be sure that they can come back to somewhere. Shouldn't it be something that the FMBN can pursue more and see to it that these employers of labor do what needs to be done?
In fact, like you said from the beginning, we are new management, and we must acknowledge that this bank has not been really hard. We need a lot of sensitization to do because the bank has a lot of opportunities to offer Nigerians, but not many Nigerians know about the activities of the bank or the opportunities that are available for them to take. For example, we have a number of products. The bank has financed estates in different cities across the country. That's number one. Number two, we also created what we call the Cooperative Housing Development Loan, where cooperatives on their own can design the kind of houses they want, cost those houses according to the income of their members, and they choose their locations, and then approach the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria to say, we are a cooperative society of, say, 100 members. We want to build 100 houses for our members, 52 bedroom, 53 bedroom, and we need the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria to finance those houses. We would actually finance construction of those houses, and when the houses are completed, we would also provide mortgage loans to the individual members of the cooperative so that they can buy the houses from the cooperative society. So that's one product. Then we also have another product which we call the individual construction loan, where an individual who has a title to land can design the kind of house he wants, and he can actually approach the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria to take a loan and build a house by himself. Then we have the National Housing Fund loan, which is where an individual contributor to the fund can identify a house anywhere in Nigeria, and he gets an offer to buy the house, and he submits that offer to a primary mortgage bank. And you say to the primary mortgage bank, I am a contributor to the National Housing Fund, and I have been offered a house that I want to buy. And then you submit the necessary documents. They would package the loan and forward to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. We would then aggregate those loans, because what we do with the PMBs is that we finance them and then they on-lend to the beneficiary. This structure is also created by the NHF Act. So the individual will approach the primary mortgage bank, who will then package the loans of, say, 10, in a batch of 10 individuals, forward to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. we would process and approve those loans for those individuals and do an offer letter to the PMB to say, for example, Mr. A, we have approved the mortgage loan for the purchase of so-so house for Mr. A. The amount is 20 million, Mr. B amount is 30 million, and then the total amount of money will be disbursed to the primary mortgage bank for on lending to those individuals. And then the individuals will then be paying on a monthly basis to us through the primary mortgage bank. You know, so those are some. We even created what we call the home renovation loan, which is just 1 million naira. Because one of the things we discovered actually is that it is not every Nigerian that necessarily needs a loan to buy a house or to buy a house. There are individuals that would have made efforts on their own, built a house, probably require only to fix ceiling or fix some window or do some finishing, and then move into those houses. So we created the home renovation loan, and in the course of implementation, we discovered that individuals that are actually living in rural areas, like local government headquarters, can actually use 1 million naira to buy maybe land of 300,000, 400,000, and build something to have a roof over their head. Because of the success of that product, the new management is looking at increasing that amount to maybe about 2 million to 3 million, so that it can also reflect the current realities in terms of in terms of the escalation of prices of building materials.
So, Mr. Osidi, your submissions here are very interesting. I'm actually very happy, and I'm about to apply for one of those loans. That 1 million, because I live in the village.
Okay.
But again, the processes. When your inaugural speech, you talked about automation.
Yes.
You talked about to reduce the human element, so that people are somewhat guaranteed that their processes will be clean and clear, and if they qualify, they will get the loans they deserve. How is that something that's working out? Because I've heard a testimony, someone talk about how he collected a facility. In his own mind, by his calculation, he had paid up at least what was remaining was quite small. But by the time he came to say, okay, let me get an update on my facility, what's remaining, it was almost 3 times what he had already paid that they said was remaining.
All right. One of the things we want to achieve is to have greater efficiency so that we can serve the customer better. And one of the best ways to achieve efficiency is through automation. So the bank is currently deploying the core banking application technology. In fact, it's about 96% complete. This new management intends to close that, complete that deployment in the next 2 months. And what that does is that it introduces transparency and eases the process. Individuals are now going to be able to go online, apply for their facilities, and you can actually track your application. Because one of the legacy issues that this bank has had is that individuals would apply for loans and it takes forever to get approved. And sometimes people get frustrated. By the time the loans are approved, maybe an individual may have even withdrawn and said, look, I'm no longer interested. Or where you have someone who has offered a house to you, by the time the loan process is ready, the landlord may have decided not to sell again, or would have probably changed his mind and sold to someone else. So we intend to address this by automation. So the deployment of the core banking application technology is going to help us, and we are just about to conclude that process. Secondly, we also intend to take the product to the people. Right now, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is located in all the state capitals of this country. So we are only located in state capitals. And one of the things we want to explore is the informal sector. If you want to offer Nigerians, because you had also asked the question whether the loans we offer are only for civil servants. Any Nigerian can decide to tell himself, decide for himself how much he thinks is his a monthly income, determine how much of that constitutes 2.5% of what he earns, and choose on his own as a self-employed Nigerian to contribute to the National Housing Fund. And if he contributes also for 6 months, he becomes qualified to take a mortgage loan.
When Newsnight returned, we asked Mr. Osidi, what are the products that you have? What is it that you're offering to the Nigerian that will make them say, this is the way to go?
Mr. Shehu Osidi again, it's a pleasure to have you on Newsnight.
Thank you very much.
Let's look at Nigeria. I know you said something earlier about we don't have houses we need, and we have houses we don't.
We need houses we don't have.
We need houses we don't have, and we have houses we don't need.
Yes.
But how is it then that we have so many empty houses in the country, across the country, and people keep building? And my friend said something the other day. They said, if we say there's no money, there's no money, but people are still building. There are many houses empty, and people are looking for houses to rent. The rents are up there, and all of that. And when you go to say, okay, I want a mortgage, they tell you it's not possible, it's not available. Is that the space we're supposed to have as a country?
Okay, let me start by saying that mortgages are available. We won't say mortgages are not available, but the question is affordability. Whether the mortgages are available, are affordable, which is a function of the houses that are also available in the market. And that's why I said we have houses we don't need, and we need houses we don't have. And what I would say to Nigerians, from the investor perspective, I believe that Nigerians should actually target the mass market. You have estates in Nigeria where they will tell you, for example, that a housing unit costs 1 billion naira. I mean, what's that? So, which means that if you have 20 units in that kind of estate, that will cost about 20 billion naira to buy 20 houses. And 20 billion naira can actually buy you 200 or 300 or 400 housing units, depending on what kind of houses. So I think investors in Nigeria should actually invest in the mass market, where they can build more number of houses for more Nigerians to actually benefit from these houses, rather than build palaces and then have them vacant for 1 year, 2 years. There are developments that have stayed for like 5 years, nobody's occupying them. And I think that is why government will also need to introduce some kind of taxes for houses that are not put to use, so that individual landlords or owners will be forced to either put them to use, or will be encouraged to build the kind of houses that people can easily afford. So I think generally that is the problem. There are investors that have capital to invest, but they are investing in the wrong market, in my opinion.
So you said something earlier when I said mortgages are not available. You said they are available, but the interest rate is between sometimes between 18 and 27, and every time that the central bank moves the monetary policy meets and decides on certain rates, those interest rates also go up as well. And thank God for the FMB, and your rates have remained there, as you said, single digits. So what's causing that? Why, when they know that it's supposed to be a mortgage, which means you're supposed to be able to, people are supposed to be able to come collect this and get homes for themselves. So what's causing that? Is it a question of non-availability of infrastructure, or non-availability of the funds, or the legal framework backing mortgaging in Nigeria?
Okay. Yes, I said mortgages are available. When you said mortgages, sometimes they will tell you they are not available. Mortgages are available, but the question is, at what cost are these mortgages? And so you can have mortgages that are available but are not affordable. Now, it is because largely the cost of funds. Most commercial entities that are offering mortgages at between 18 to 27% are offering those because of the way and manner in which they also generate their funding. So if you go, for example, to the capital market to borrow funding, you will have to service those facilities at commercial rate. Why ours is different is because we are getting deductions from Nigerian workers at 2%. We pay 2% when you retire. So the cost of fund to us is relatively low. And that is why, because that is the intendment of the creation of this housing scheme. It is actually to make sure that the houses are cheap and the mortgages are also cheap.
Sorry. Let me. You mentioned something that just caught my attention.
Yes.
You pay 2% when the person retires.
Retires, yes. The scheme is such that whether or not you benefit from our loan facilities, when you retire, either at the age of 60 or after 35 years of service, we refund your total contribution plus 2% interest. Yes. So it's actually more or less a contributory savings scheme that affords you an opportunity to take a mortgage, which you can also finish paying before you retire. And then when you retire, your total contribution is paid back to you at 2% interest. So quite a number of people have called me to say, thank you, Federal Mortgage Bank, that when they retired, their gratuity or pension or whatever had not been paid, and they only had to run to Federal Mortgage Bank to take at least their contributions to get some respite before those other payments start coming in.
This is interesting. Yeah. And again, a lot of people, and you said it, that an individual just get up and start contributing to their
Yes. A self-employed Nigerian on his own, a self-employed Nigerian can decide to say, look, I'm a trader, and what I earn in a month is averagely 150,000. So I can decide to contribute 2.5% of that to the National Housing Fund on your own. And so whatever it is you tell us is your income, we'll do some verifications and then we take it. And so after 6 months, then you become qualified to apply for a loan.
Okay, so let's get back to this matter of mortgage in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes, it might sound good that people can actually come pick up facilities and go buy homes and all of that. But there are those who consider the negative effects of mortgaging. They say is a long-term financial commitment involved. They see that as a negative effect. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. Because which is better actually? If I can have an opportunity to live in a house that is ultimately going to become my own, and I do not have to pay huge capital for that until after a long time, I think it just provides convenience, So I don't think it is a burden, because don't forget that a property normally appreciates. So you enjoy capital appreciation even while you are living in your own house. So ultimately, it is a win-win situation for you.
So it's something that you encourage anybody to get into?
Oh, I'm encouraging everybody to take a mortgage. And then let me go back also to what you said about mortgage in Nigeria generally. What I also said, the price of any commodity is also a function of demand and supply. If you have huge demand with less supply, the prices are likely to go up. So if we have Nigerians that have enough capital to invest in housing, changing their mindset from what I said before to finance developments that are easily accessible and affordable to people, you can even enjoy economies of scale. Rather than use 20 billion naira, for example, to build 20 houses, you can actually use 20 billion naira to build 400 houses. And then you can replicate that because you can quickly sell and then move to build another set and sell and move to build another. So ultimately, even from the profit perspective, you can also make more money than invest huge capital in only a few units that stay vacant because people cannot afford them.
Okay, so let's do this now. Amongst the products you offer a 30-year mortgage at a single-digit interest rate, right?
Yes.
You also do individual construction loans. You mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
You do cooperative housing development, which you also, and then the rent to own.
Yes.
But I think is it 2023 or thereabout, or early 2024, the Minister of Housing talked about a committee, housing reforms tax team,
Yes.
setting a goal to deliver about 20,000 housing units this year.
Yes. Okay.
Is the FMBN part of that process? Are you the ones funding that? Would that make it easier for Nigerians to access?
Okay. So let me clarify that. The Housing Institutions Reform Task Team is actually to look at the reforms generally in the housing sector, with respect to, more specifically, the institutions that have the mandate to deliver houses. For example, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, the Federal Housing Authority, the Family Homes Fund, and so on. However, the 20,000 housing delivery target that you talked about is actually the delivery for the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development under the Presidential Deliverables and Priorities Program. So the presidential deliverable for the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development is to deliver 20,000 houses annually. And so for this year, they are required to do that. And the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is a critical stakeholder in that. Through the multiplicity of the product offerings that I've talked about, we also have what we call the Ministerial Pilot Housing Scheme, which is a collaboration with our parent ministry, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, where the ministry provides land, and then the Federal Mortgage Bank provides funding for developers who deliver houses. And when the houses are delivered, we also provide mortgage financing to the individual off-takers. And we are also required under the deliverable to also deliver some number of houses through these products, like I said. And so, in order to support the vision of Mr. President under the Renewed Hope Housing Agenda, we also provided a 100 billion naira off-taker guarantee to the consortium of developers that are developing about 100,000 units across the country. And so whatever number of units they are able to deliver this year is also supposed to form part of that deliverable for the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Okay.
Yeah, so
this conversation is really interesting, but I want us to break it down. Because I somewhat I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing a passion to see Nigerians get accommodation, get housing for themselves, affordable housing. But it's as though it's impossible for the woman who's by the roadside selling bread or akara or corn, the petty trader. It looks like it's impossible for this person to afford a house, probably because they don't know. Maybe let's speak to that and see, is there something that these kind of people, you mentioned something about taking it to the people in the communities. How would that work to see that Nigerians, a petty trader, can get a roof over their head and their children? We've seen videos online on social media of people living in slums. We're living in rooms where it's raining and the whole floor is wet.
Yeah.
And they are in that space. Nigerians.
Yeah, those are the kind of gaps we intend to close. You see, one of the initiatives that the new management is bringing on board is that we are looking at financing housing designs that are organic. What I mean by organic is, for instance, in order to address the issue of affordability for the kind of woman that you have described, maybe a petty trader. So you have a space that, for example, you can start with a 1-bedroom that is expandable to a 2-bedroom. So the design is a design of a 2-bedroom, and then you start with a 1-bedroom, and then you can now expand to 2-bedroom when your income level increases. You have a sitting room, you have a 1-bedroom, you have a kitchen, you have a toilet, and then you have a space that you can expand to a 2nd-bedroom as your income improves. And I was told, although I was told that the state government actually conceived that idea a few years ago, when they started, they said it cost them less than 3 million naira. So those are the kind of initiatives that we have to create so that the ordinary akara seller on the street can also hope to have a house that she can call her own.
There's no challenge with securing the funds, and just the movement of the funds, and then the ability to track.
That's a very interesting question. So what we then do is that we are approaching the informal sector through the instrumentality of cooperative societies. So we encourage them to form clusters of cooperatives. So if you're an association of Okada riders, one interesting thing that we have discovered in this space is that people who belong to cooperative societies, maybe due to some cultural reasons, don't want to fail in paying their loans. So you have a cooperative society of maybe artisans, they know themselves, everybody knows where everybody lives, and then they come together, they know how much is the income that they are able to generate, and then we have an interaction with them, and normally we tell them to determine the kind of houses they want. They, design those houses, get professionals to design those houses, and then we take a corporate guarantee of the cooperative society as a corporate entity. So the cooperative society is responsible for collecting those repayments from the individuals and paying to the bank.
You're talking about funds. We hear about repatriation of funds back to Nigeria, how much money inflows from the diaspora. Are you considering that to help to fund this product you're pursuing?
Oh, sure. We have also taken note of the fact that Nigerians in the diaspora are making huge contributions to their host communities. And interestingly, Nigerians in the diaspora make huge remittances to the country. In fact, on an annual basis, I would say, averagely by CBN records, Nigerians in the diaspora remit about $22 billion annually. That's huge. That's a large chunk of even the country's, almost like more than our budget. So we have decided to also create a product that we call the NHL product for Nigerians in the diaspora, Nigeria Diaspora Mortgage Scheme. And the idea is that we want to afford Nigerians in the diaspora an opportunity to own houses back home. From our interactions, it is very clear that Nigerians in the diaspora have been making efforts to build houses at home. They've sent monies to relations, friends, and so on and so forth. And most of them didn't have a good experience because even when in some cases they are shown pictures of houses that are being built for them, where by the time they return, there is nothing. So we decided to provide an institutional framework that will make it possible for them to contribute to the National Housing Fund through the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. And then they can, through that, own houses back home. And what this does to the country is that we are able to channel these remittances, because these remittances come both from informal and informal channels, and if we can crowd some of this towards, or channel some of these remittances towards housing development, that would help Nigerians both at home and abroad. Don't forget that these houses are going to be built in Nigeria. They will be owned by Nigerians in the diaspora, but they are going to be built here in Nigeria. And we are going to have Nigerians benefiting from those opportunities, while also giving opportunity to those Nigerians in the diaspora to own houses back home.
In Nigeria, there are those people who feel like, as we say here, they are live and no strong. So what about if they just want to rent? Is there a plan to support those kind of people, or is the FMBN all about owning a home and not forget about rent?
Because of the issues that we have discussed earlier, we do recognize the fact that it is not every Nigerian that can own a home. At least, at some point in time, you probably may have to be a tenant, pay rent, and then you may not necessarily need to own a home, or you may not have the capacity to own a home. So, and like in other climes, the rental housing is a very huge part of the housing market. And so we are also making efforts now to explore that market, or that segment of the market, by providing opportunities where people can actually access facilities to pay rent. So we have created a product we call rental assistance product, where we would pay rent for contributors to the National Housing Fund on an annual basis. So for instance, in January, we pay your rent, and then you make the repayment on a monthly basis. So that will also create some relief. At least we are providing a shelter over people's heads. And then you may be a tenant, and after some time, depending on how your income level increases, you can eventually become a homeowner. So we're actually looking at the rental market, trying to also provide succor to Nigerians by assisting them to pay rent. So this product is soon to be launched. And we are also looking at another product, which we call the Hostel Accommodation Housing Scheme, where we are going to also be financing hostels in universities. The idea is that the contributors to the National Housing Fund are Nigerian workers. So we want to catch them young, that while you're on campus, you can feel and see the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria in action. If we finance a hostel in a university campus, it means as a student, you begin to hear and feel about the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, because it is these students that are expected to graduate to become Nigerian workers to also and make contributions to the National Housing Fund. So that is also another challenge in Nigeria. Apart from rental housing that we talked about, university hostel accommodation is also key and very critical. Most of the public institutions don't have good hostels, and a lot of students live outside campus with a lot of social vices that are associated with staying in those locations.
So if you were going to give an advice to Nigerians right now, what would that advice be?
In terms of
like housing, in terms of like funding your house, in terms of like living?
Okay, I would say Nigerians should take advantage of the opportunities available through the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. The reason being that housing, like we have discussed, is a basic need. Housing is capital intensive, and so you do not need to go through the stress of raising huge capital before you can get a house. You can have an opportunity to take a loan, single-digit loan, pay for a house, and then you pay gradually, which is quite convenient and affordable. Quite convenient and affordable, I would say. Because rather than look, for instance, you want to buy a house of 20 million or 30 million, rather than look for 20 million in cash. And that speaks to what Mr. President had said in the course of his campaign, that we need to create a credit economy in this country. You need to buy a car, you don't have to take the entire capital to buy a car. Or you want to buy a house, you don't need to raise the entire capital and to make a single payment, a bullet payment for the house. So that is the opportunity that we offer. The interest rates are the lowest in the country. Commercial banks are doing as high as 30-something% right now. And so Federal Mortgage Bank is still within the threshold of single digit.
Thank you.
You're okay. Thank you very much.
That's our show for today. I want to thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Let us know what you think. Our handles are right there on your screen. Send us a tweet and send us a mail. Let's hear from you. Is it easy for you to afford a home, or are you looking out for a palace? Well, I'd like to hear from you. Also, watch this show again and other episodes of the show. Just go to youtube.com/channelsweb. You see the Newsnight playlist there, or go to our website, channelstv.com/podcast to get started. Till we come your way again, it's bye-bye.